Fear of medical procedures is understandable. It's a strange thing to trust someone enough to render you unconscious and then cut into you before sewing it all back together. It sounds weird when you put it that way. But hey, it's often necessary. Life-changing, if not life-saving. People gotta get their appendixes removed. Folks need pacemakers installed. Cancer's gotta be cut out. Butt implants are popular, I guess. It's normal to feel nervous before going to surgery, but you have to know that most of the time everything goes off without a hitch. The stories that we're going to discuss today are in no way indicative of the way most medical procedures go, but boy, are they terrifying. Hello horror heads, and welcome back to the Scariest channel on YouTube, Top 5 Scary Videos. I'm your horror host, Keegan Hughes, and today we'll be counting down the top 5 scary times a surgery went wrong. Before we get started, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe for more incision insanity. Wicked. Let's begin. Rolling its way into number 5, we've got awake during eyeball removal. Yeah, you heard that right. This is horror movie 101 right here. Remove somebody's optical orb. There aren't too many things I can imagine being worse than feeling someone pull out one of your eyeballs, but hey, Carol Weher went through it. Carol needed her right eyeball removed due to chronic pain from her recurrent corneal erosion syndrome. For those of you who don't spend hours a day learning different medical terms, this is when the outermost layer of epithelial cells in someone's eye fails, leaving sensitive corneal nerves exposed. She had undergone 14 corrective surgeries to relieve the pain before deciding to remove the eye entirely. While under the knife, the anesthesia wore off, but only partially, so she was conscious to a degree, but couldn't signal the surgeons. In fact, she could hear what the surgeons were saying. Want to hear something you never want to hear in relation to your eyeball? Cut deeper, pull harder. Holy sh**. Thankfully, she felt no pain at this point, only intense pressure. However, the injection of a paralytic drug halfway through the procedure hit her like what she describes as ignited fuel. Yikes. The pain was so bad that Carol fully believed she had died and gone to hell. What did you do to deserve hell, Carol? You bad. The badassery continued afterwards too when Carol decided to become an activist for victims of anesthesia awareness, fighting for others who might have heard doctors remark upon how deep they needed to cut into their flesh. Swinging in at number 4, we've got an amputated wang. This one will hit home for all the proud wang owners out there. So a man by the name of Herschel Rawls had bladder cancer. Tough break. He went to have the cancerous bits removed, and hey, the operation was successful. Herschel woke up and his wife told him that the cancer had been removed. Also, unexpected twist, so had his penis and testicles. Responding to this, Herschel Rawls said, and I quote, "I was one mad dude." I don't blame you one bit, Herschel. Apparently the doctors never mentioned that they'd be taking off so much, and in fact, they never even tested this tissue for cancer. While removing the cancer from his bladder, the surgeons worried that it might have spread to his member. They removed it as a precautionary measure, and in an unfortunate case of assuming making an of you and me, the additional bits were indeed cancer-free. I've prepared a limerick for just such an occasion. There once was a man, Herschel Rawls, who had problems with bladder cell walls. He went under the knife and was woke by his wife to find missing his and his balls. Is that in bad taste? Apologies. Coming in at number 3, we've got irresponsible beyond belief. So there was a surgeon named David Arndt. He was absolutely killing the game at one point. Widely renowned, wildly successful, well-respected, Ivy League education. This guy had it made. Something in him said that wasn't enough though, and he went a little off the rails. And by a little, I mean like totally, 100%. He came into work one day looking like crap. Unshaven, sleepy-eyed, the works. Scheduled to operate on a spinal patient, Arndt didn't seem to be focused on the task at hand. Throughout the multi-hour ordeal, he kept asking the nurse if Bob had shown up. Bob was not a senior surgeon or a family member of the patient, no. Bob was code for Arndt's paycheck. When the check showed up, the nurse delivered it to the operating room and the lad went loopy. 7 hours into the operation with the patient's back wide open, spine exposed, he decided to take a quick break. And by quick break, I mean a 35-minute excursion to the bank to cash the check. He had bills to pay, I guess, don't we all? The medical board did not see this as an understandable situation though and suspended his license. Good call in all likelihood. So why did Arndt act the way that he did? No one knows for sure, but he was known to have a penchant for methamphetamine. He actually made money on the side by selling it. Plus, he drugged and had sex with a 15-year-old boy at some point after this. Wait, what? Who is this guy? Coming in at number 2, we've got life-altering surgery. And life-altering in a negative way. Who knew? The story actually appeared on Radiolab a few years back when they interviewed a man named Kevin. He suffered from chronic seizures and underwent surgery to get them in check. Part of his brain was removed and all was well until he turned 35. Then the seizures came back, which prompted him to go under the knife once more. This time, the surgeons were worried that they might affect the part of his brain that allowed him to enjoy music, so Kevin stayed awake, singing as they prodded at his gray matter. After this musical interlude, the seizures stopped altogether, which would have been a riotous success if Kevin's personality didn't drastically change. He began playing piano non-stop and eating ravenously at all hours, and his libido was off the charts as well. He wanted sex all the time, and this became very problematic when he got on the computer. He was suddenly hopelessly addicted to pornography. Hardcore stuff too. Bondage, bestiality, child pornography. He didn't want to do it, but he continued on compulsively. All of this illegal and morally reprehensible stuff eventually led to his arrest, and Kevin pleaded guilty. However, it does get weirder from here. Neurologist Orrin Davinsky came forward and claimed that Kevin wasn't to blame for his behavior. Instead, the culprit was Kluver-Bucy syndrome, a rare behavioral impairment caused by damage to his anterior temporal lobes. These lobes keep our darkest desires in check, and they weren't doing that for him anymore. Thanks to this argument, the sentencing was reduced and Kevin spent 26 months behind bars and 25 months on house arrest. He's on medication now and shows remorse for his actions, but imagine not being in control of your impulses like that. And I'm not just talking about eating an entire tub of ice cream in one go, but also committing crimes you didn't want to do. And finally, at number 1, the nose doctor. Okay, this one is truly terrifying. It goes beyond neglect and unforeseen circumstances and finds itself in the realm of psychopaths and gross negligence. Not things you want associated with the doctor you're putting your life in the hands of. So Mark Weinberger was a man who went by the name The Nose Doctor. Not exactly the kind of catchy title I would trust in a medical professional, but go off. He worked in Merrillville, Indiana, which had plenty of steel mills. The air pollution from these mills caused sinus problems for all sorts of folks who would then go see the nose doctor to get fixed up. You would think that a doctor might try some less invasive solutions first, like maybe a nasal spray or a neti pot. Well, this was not the case. Weinberger would recommend surgery almost every time for every ailment. 90% of patients were told they needed sinus surgery after their first appointment. The man was outright lying to these people. He'd show them pictures of bloody polyps and other grossness and claim that they were growing inside their sinuses. These pictures were fake, just meant to scare people into going through with it. And because he had his own CAT scan machine, folks didn't see a need to go somewhere else for analysis. From sniffles to sinus infections, everything was worth an operation. He just wanted to drill holes in people. Most folks definitely didn't need surgery and were actually worse off because of it. Long recovery times, infections, you name it. In fact, he even missed many real ailments in his patients. While working on a 9-year-old whose sinuses weren't even fully developed yet, he missed a tumor on her pituitary gland. A woman came in with throat cancer, went undiagnosed, and died. Despite all this, the nose doctor was able to put together quite a lot of money and live large. Yachts, vacation properties, 5-story homes. The guy was lavishly living. All of his misdeeds did catch up to him though, and he ended up being sued for malpractice. At the first sign of trouble, Weinberger skipped town and hid out in Italy for 5 years. When he was finally caught, he tried to cut his own throat, failed, and found himself behind bars for 7 years with a $55 million settlement coming his way. Just goes to show, the nose doesn't always know. Good Lord. So what'd you think of the list? Which is the scariest of the 5? Are there any surgery stories you'd like to share? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more invasive ones from the top 5 scary epidemics from horror fiction, part 2. REFan1996 says, fun fact, I Am Legend was also the inspiration for Night of the Living Dead. To the point where when Matheson watched it, he mistook it for an adaptation made without his knowledge. Imagine that, going to see the big hit movie at the time and finding out it was all based on something you wrote. Would you be proud? Mad, or a little bit of both? Zimmer CJ says, Genesis is my favorite epidemic story, the worst plague unleashed into the world. Humans. Yeah, we're pretty diseasy, eh? Would that mean the apocalypse is some sort of cure? Josh Hopkinson says you should do top 5 bloodiest movies of all time. This is a great idea, but I'd have a hard time not just picking 5 Herschel Gordon Lewis flicks. Shadow P says scariest thing I've ever read was Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. Capitalism is scary as hell. Oh damn, we getting Marxist up in here? Seize the means of production, comrades. And Jake Caldwell says dope Spitfire jacket. Thanks, Jake. And that's all the time we have for today. Before I toss some shot puts in a rubber room, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe for more medical anarchy. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. While under the knife, the anesthesia. Responding to this. Excuse me. You know, these bubbly waters, they really put a lot of bubbles in them. Bob was code for Arndt's pain check. A rare behavioral? Yep, to his anterior temporal. Beep beep bop bop bop.